Another big part of this chapter was solving quadratic equations. We went through a few different methods. We did it by graphing, factoring, quadratic formula, and also, most recently, by completing the square. That's not going to be on the test for solving, but we're going to have to complete the square to get it in vertex form. Solving by graphing, 3 steps. Set the equation equal to 0, graph the equation, and find the x-intercepts. Those x-intercepts are the same as the solutions. They're also called zeros or roots. They have a lot of different names, but they all kind of mean the same thing. They're all the x-intercepts. And the solutions, zeros, or roots. Any term would apply. So let's look at the first one back here, number 17. The graphing part is already done for us. We want to know what are the solutions of this equation. It's equal to 0, so we could graph it either by hand like we just did earlier or on our calculator and then find out where the x-intercepts are. Those are going to be the solutions. Those are the x values that make this whole thing equal to 0. So there's 2 of them here. X equals -1 or x equals 3. All right, those both make this equation equal to 0. Now, we could check it by plugging those in for x, and that would make it 0. Or we could solve this by factoring and kind of back up our answer as well. But let's go ahead and take a look at how to do solving by factoring. Notice I've got a little star and highlighted here. The one that's written on your sheet doesn't come out nicely, so go ahead and change number 18 to 2x squared plus 5x minus 8 equals 4. So cross out yours and rewrite this. Now, to do this one, let's kind of go back. You don't have to turn your paper over, but let's look at what it has to say here. To do this by factoring, set the equation equal to 0, just like the last one. Factor, and then we have to set each factor equal to 0 and solve. So for 18, first thing we need to get everything on one side so that it's equal to 0. So we're going to subtract 4. 2x squared plus 5x minus 12 equals 0. Now we need to factor. So we know we're going to have a 2x and an x to multiply to give us 2x squared. We need to find the two numbers that multiply to give us -12, and where these two multiply and these two multiply and then add up to give us 5x. So we need to figure out numbers that multiply to give us -12 and then work to add up to give us 5x in here and here. So for this one, we end up getting plus 4 with the x, minus 3 with the 2x, because that gives us a -3x here, plus 8x, which gives us 5x. I'm going to erase those little arcs there. And now that this is factored, if two things multiply to give us 0, one of those two things has to equal 0. So either 2x minus 3 equals 0 or x plus 4 equals 0. We'll just solve each equation. Add 3 to both sides, we get 2x equals 3. Divide both sides by 2, we get 3 halves. Over here, all we have to do is subtract 4. We get x equals -4. All right, one last way to solve that you're going to need to remember how to do is using the quadratic formula. Right? Just like all the others, set the equation equal to 0 first. Always have to set it equal to 0. Then we can use the quadratic formula. So you need to know that formula for the test. And this is what we can use all the time if we want, but usually we try and factor it first. If it doesn't factor nicely, we can use the quadratic formula. So first step, get it equal to 0. So get everything on one side. X squared minus 5x minus 14 equals 0. Oh, sorry, 6 minus 8, we get -2 here. x squared minus 5x minus 2 equals 0. Now, if it helps you to write them out, go ahead and do so. A is going to be 1, B is negative 5, and C is negative 2. We have to put those into that formula. So, opposite of B, well, B is negative 5, the opposite of that is positive 5. Plus or minus square root of B squared, so negative 5, don't forget to put it in parentheses, squared, minus 4 times A times C, all over 2 times A. So first thing to do, simplify the stuff under the square root. Negative 5 squared, positive 25. All right, remember, negative times a negative is going to give you a positive. This first term right here under the square root should always be positive. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, times negative 2 gives us positive 8, all over 2. So we end up with 5 plus or minus square root of 33, all over 2. If you can, you want to try and simplify the square root, but here there are no perfect squares that go in there, so this is as far as we can go. Unless we wanted to get it to be a decimal, then we could do 5 plus square root of 33, all divided by 2 in our calculator, and 5 minus square root of 33, all over 2 in our calculator. But for now, we can just leave it like this.